For years, Tiger Woods wasn't treated like an athlete. He was treated like precision itself. Win, stay silent, stay in control. The perfect idol for sponsors, for fans, for a media culture that loves clean stories. And that perfection is exactly what set the collapse in motion. Because when you're built into a flawless machine, the smallest human crack becomes an earthquake. This is not a video about gossip. It's about the psychology of myth-making. How fame rewards masks and punishes vulnerability. How power can normalize bad decisions. And how public shame can push a person into isolation and cascading mistakes. Tiger's rise was so dominant that it didn't just create a champion. It created a character the world expected him to play forever. And when personal scandals surfaced in widely reported ways, the story flipped overnight. The public didn't just watch an athlete struggle. It watched an idol break. Sponsors distanced themselves. Trust collapsed. Headlines shifted from trophies to fallout. The same crowd that once consumed victory began consuming disaster. But the most revealing part of this story isn't the scandal itself. It's what came after. The slow, unglamorous war of rebuilding. Therapy, restructuring life, learning limits, and fighting to reclaim not only titles, but ownership of his own narrative. Because the question underneath everything is the one this channel keeps returning to. When fame turns you into a god, what happens the moment the world realizes you're human? To understand the impact of the crack, you have to understand how high the myth was built. Tiger's image was discipline made visible, relentless practice, emotional control, record-breaking dominance. He didn't just win, he made winning look inevitable. In a sport where pressure lives in millimeters, he looked untouchable, and that made him priceless to brands that sell confidence. The machine around him grew with every victory. Endorsements weren't just income. They were proof that the perfect idol idea was working. Fans didn't only follow a golfer. They followed a symbol of mastery. And symbols come with rules. Never look lost. Never look weak. Never look messy. The public story had to stay clean, because clean was the product. That's the hidden cost of being perfect on camera. You start living inside a character that doesn't get tired, doesn't doubt, doesn't ask for help. The higher you climb, the less room you have to be ordinary. And when your identity fuses with excellence, failure stops feeling like an outcome and starts feeling like extinction. So even before any scandal hit the headlines, the pressure was already there, quiet, constant, and structural, because the world wasn't paying for Tiger Woods the man. It was paying for Tiger Woods the idea, and the bigger the idea became, the more dangerous the truth could become. And the more dangerous it became for the gap between the man and the brand to be seen. In environments filled with money, access, and constant admiration, bad decisions don't always feel like bad decisions. They can feel normal. Entitlement can feel earned. Secrecy can feel necessary. And when a public image is built on control, hiding anything starts to feel like protecting what people believe in. Then the personal scandals surfaced, widely reported, impossible to contain, and the idol cracked in public. Not gradually, instantly. The story wasn't a great athlete made mistakes. The story became the perfect athlete wasn't who we thought. And because his fame had been constructed as moral and emotional certainty, the reaction wasn't just disappointment. It was shock. Sponsors moved away. Press coverage turned from admiration to autopsy. Every detail became content. The same discipline that once looked like strength now looked like distance. The same silence that once looked like focus now looked like hiding. And public shame has a unique force. It doesn't simply expose you. It rewrites your entire past in the minds of millions. This is where fame becomes its own trap. The world doesn't ask, how do we help a human recover? It asks, what does this mean for the story? And once the story turns negative, it demands more. More explanations, more confessions, more consequences, until the person at the center stops being a person and becomes a spectacle. A spectacle is easy to consume and hard to survive. When reputations collapse at that scale, the damage isn't limited to endorsements or headlines. It hits identity. The athlete who once controlled every frame suddenly loses control of the narrative itself. And when you've been trained to perform invincibility, being seen as broken can feel unbearable. That's when isolation starts to look like safety. But isolation also creates space for spirals, shame-feeding withdrawal, withdrawal feeding unhealthy coping, and each new misstep reinforcing the worst version of the public story. Add the physical toll of elite sports, injuries, rehab, setbacks, and the comeback stops being a question of talent. It becomes a question of stability. The outside world often reads these years as disappearance. Inside, they're usually survival mode, trying to rebuild structure while being remembered for collapse. Because fame doesn't simply report your worst day. It archives it. It replays it. It turns it into a reference point. And the industry around fame is not designed to reward slow healing. It rewards dramatic returns or dramatic endings. A quiet middle, therapy, boundaries, rebuilding relationships, relearning routines, doesn't sell as easily as disaster. So the turning point in this story isn't a single announcement. It's the slow moment where the goal shifts, not just to win again, but to regain autonomy over the self, separating the human being from the character the world demands, and choosing a life that can exist even if the trophies don't return. That choice is what makes the rebuild a war instead of a miracle. A miracle is fast and clean. Recovery is slow and awkward. It's learning limits after spending a lifetime pushing past them. It's accepting help after being worshipped for never needing it. It's rebuilding trust in private while the public waits for a highlight. Tiger's path back required more than practice. It required restructuring, facing what the spotlight intensified, living with consequences, and finding discipline that wasn't only about performance, but about stability. And when he returned to competition, it wasn't the same story as before. The aura of perfection was gone, replaced by something rarer in sports, visible struggle. That's why the comeback, when it finally arrived in a meaningful way, landed differently. Not as proof of invincibility, but as proof that a person can rebuild after becoming a symbol and then being shattered in public. For many viewers, it became less about dominance and more about endurance. Endurance against shame, against injury, against the narrative that once defined him. And that's the twist at the heart of this episode. The real victory wasn't simply a trophy. It was reclaiming authorship, taking back the right to be complicated, imperfect, human, without needing the world to approve every chapter. Because once you've lived as an idol, the hardest thing isn't losing the pedestal. It's learning to stand on the ground again. Tiger Woods' story leaves a clear message. Fame creates gods, and then demands blood the moment it discovers they're human. The public loves perfection because it feels safe. But perfection is also a pressure chamber, and when identity fuses with winning, the truth becomes a threat. The moral is universal. If your value depends on never cracking, you'll spend your life hiding cracks instead of healing them. And sometimes the biggest enemy isn't a competitor, it's the fear of no longer being the hero people paid to believe in. Now it's your turn. Do you think celebrity collapses are mostly personal responsibility, or are they predictable outcomes of a system that rewards masks and monetizes breakdowns? Comment your take below, especially if you've ever felt pressure to look fine while falling apart inside. If you want more documentary-style stories about the hidden side of fame, how icons are built, used, and sometimes broken, subscribe and turn on notifications. And here's the question to carry into the next episode. How many other perfect idols are smiling for cameras right now, one crack away from collapse?